Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Jeffrey Epstein Show. I'm your host, Bobbycapucci, and this is Daily Drop number 281. Ghislaine Maxwell and her legal team have continued to try and do whatever they can to slow things down and to make the situation seem as if Ghislaine Maxwell is being treated unfairly by the prosecution and those who are keeping her in jail. One of her biggest requests recently has been to be moved out of protective custody and onto the main line in general population. Now, when that request was first made, I laughed here on the podcast. Anyone who knows anything about the prison system in America, federal or state, understands that somebody like Ghislaine Maxwell has no business on the main line. Second, she requested the identities of those who are accusing her of these crimes. She said she needed those identities to further her own case. Well, in a ruling today, Judge Nathan has denied both requests and basically served up Ghislaine Maxwell and her high-priced team of lawyers another scrumptious L for dinner. Our article today is from CNBC. The author of that article is Dan Mangan. Headline: Accused Jeffrey Epstein sex crime enabler, participant, co-conspirator, fellow child abuser, Ghislaine Maxwell loses bid to be put into jail's general population. And again, like I said, when they first made this request, I said it pretty clearly here on the podcast that that's a non-starter, and her lawyers should be ashamed even asking that, right? If this wasn't such a serious situation where so many people were destroyed by Ghislaine Maxwell's actions and their lives were flipped upside down by her participation and help in creating this trafficking ring, then I'd say, good, let her go to the main line and let her get her just desserts. I wonder how quick her lawyers will be to request the same thing after she's convicted. I wonder how quick they'll want her on the main line then. British socialite, child abuser, co-conspirator, all-around scuzzbag, Ghislaine Maxwell on Tuesday lost her bid to be transferred from solitary confinement into the general inmate population of the Brooklyn jail, where she is being held on charges of abetting Jeffrey Epstein's sexual abuse of underage girls. She's also being held on perjury charges and charges of her own. And remember, I said from the jump, and I'll stick to this, especially considering what we know about the grand jury right now, I said that these were placeholder charges. These were just charges to get their foot in the door, to get the ball rolling, and it most certainly seems that's what we're going to be dealing with here. There is no way that the only crimes they're going to pin on Ghislaine Maxwell happened from 1994 to 1997. And never mind after the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals takes a look at that draconian plea deal. And who knows what happens there, right? If they throw that out, well, then every single crime these people have ever committed, for the most part, is going to be on the table. So there's a lot of things going on behind the scenes. There are most assuredly, more charges coming at some point. Manhattan Federal Court Judge Allison Nathan also denied a request by Maxwell's lawyers to order that the U.S. Bureau of Prisons monitor her in the same manner that the agency monitors other detainees in that jail. Again, she is not other detainees. She spent her whole life trying to become this person in so-called polite society where she's above everybody else, right? She gets special privileges. She gets special favors. She gets to go to all the cool BAFTA parties with her BFF, Joe Exotic of the Windsor family. Well, that also means if you get involved in criminal activities and you commit crimes and you get involved in a sex trafficking ring and you get caught, well, that also means that there are special circumstances that you're going to have to live under inside of that jail because you're part of so-called polite society, right? They have to protect you. They have to safeguard you. So no, you can't go and live on the main line. And so what? Cry us a river. People are observing you. Wah! Nobody cares. Nobody's sympathetic to your cause, Ghislaine. Not people in the general public, and most certainly not the judge. I mean, maybe Geraldo Rivera and Alan Dershowitz are sympathetic to your cause. Lord knows why, but, here we are. Besides those two people and maybe a couple of your co-conspirators, nobody cares that you're being observed like a zoo animal. Manhattan Federal Court Judge Allison Nathan also denied a request by Maxwell's lawyers to order that the U.S. Bureau of Prisons monitor her in the same manner that the agency monitors other detainees in that jail. Maxwell's lawyers have argued that her ability to prepare for her trial is being hampered by the fact that she is being held under strict restrictions, which include being closely watched by, among other people, BOP psychologists. Look, what help is Maxwell really giving her legal team? Everything they need to know they're able to get from her. What is Maxwell herself diving in to legal precedent and going through it case by case? If that was what was going on, why not just get rid of the high-priced attorneys, bring in one of these jailhouse attorneys, and call it a day? That's not what's going on here. What they're trying to do is they're trying to frame it that Maxwell is being treated unfairly. They're trying to frame it so later on down the line, once the trial starts, once things get rolling, they can point back to this and hope to use it for their appeal or whatever it may be. It's so transparent what's going on here. Nathan, in her denial Tuesday, wrote that Maxwell has provided the court with no evidence and no reason to believe that the surveillance measures are motivated by improper purposes. Again, Maxwell and her legal team have provided zero evidence to back up any of the things that they have talked about that they say are occurring. They're just throwing a bunch of spaghetti at the wall, hoping a couple of pieces will stick. They don't have anything. They don't have any kind of plausible defense here. And they understand that the faster things get moving here, the less time that they have to come up with some sort of ludicrous defense to try and get her off on a technicality. Because that is their only hope, folks. A technicality. Nathan also rejected a request by defense lawyers that the prosecutors be forced to disclose the identities of 3 women whose claims of being abused by Epstein after Maxwell recruited them as underage girls form the basis of the pending criminal charges against her. The judge said that the request for disclosure was premature in the case, which is scheduled to go to trial next year. And this stuff will come out in discovery. And I'm not too sure. I think it'll be redacted as far as the accusers' names, but I am not too sure. It might not be. Once it gets to the discovery phase, it might be something that goes down onto the public docket. I'm not too sure one way or the other. But the point is, they don't need these names right now. They don't need the identities of the accusers. They should focus more on their own jobs and not look to try and get the identities of these accusers. What do they want those for? So they could smear them again? So they could go on their Facebook page and say, oh, these girls like boys? I mean, that's what they did the first time around, right? They used social media against those young girls to try and make it out like they were irresponsible, like they were sleeping around. And it was just offensive to watch how that all occurred in hindsight. Maxwell, 58, is being held without bail on charges related to her alleged recruitment and grooming of girls to be sexually abused by the wealthy money manager, pedophile, Epstein, sometimes with her participation at multiple locations in the mid-90s. Not sometimes, multiple times, a lot of times. All right, more than a handful of times, a bunch of times, whatever you want to call it. Maxwell was a willing participant in this, physically and logistically. One of the alleged survivors was just 14 years old at the time she was recruited. Maxwell also is charged with perjury for allegedly falsely denying, while under oath for depositions in a civil lawsuit, her alleged conduct as his procurer. And that's a huge charge, right? Again, that is a huge charge. So what they're saying is they believe what Virginia was saying, And they think that Ghislaine Maxwell lied, or else we wouldn't see a perjury charge here. Right? So they think that the survivors, in the accounts that they have told under oath and what Maxwell has said under oath, just don't jive, and they don't believe Maxwell's version of events because, well, the evidence does not lead you there. And that is with just the evidence that we have, right? Can you imagine the mountains of evidence that the prosecution has at their fingertips in this case? She was arrested in early July at a $1 million hideaway in New Hampshire on the charges, which were filed by the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York. But no, she wasn't hiding or anything, folks. That was just normal behavior to move 36 times in a year. And no big deal moving all the way up to New Hampshire. I mean, why would she live up in New Hampshire? What is going on in New Hampshire for Ghislaine Maxwell? Not much, right? I think that's another thing that needs to be really dug into. What was she doing in New Hampshire? Her ties there must be stringently looked at, and we already know that she was close to Doug Kamen, and we know about Scott Borgerson. What other secrets are hiding in New Hampshire? Maxwell has pleaded not guilty in the case, which has drawn worldwide attention for, among other things, Maxwell and Epstein's past friendships with Presidents Donald Trump and Bill Clinton, as well as with Prince Andrew, as well as Prince Andrew and other celebrities. See, for me, I don't really care about all of that salacious stuff. That doesn't matter to me, right? Yeah, it's important. Of course, it's all part of the story. But really, the meat and potatoes of this story are the people who were enabling it on a regular basis. Now, of course, talking about Trump and Clinton and Andrew, they're all played a key part. What I mean is some of the other famous people attached to it, like, say, Chris Tucker, just because he was on the manifest in the plane that time, we can't make the leap that he's out there abusing girls. Nobody's come out and said that, right? And the same holds true for Clinton on that island, too. Nobody said he abused anybody on that island. But at the same time, it's important that we recognize that these people were enabling Jeffrey Epstein's behavior. These people were most certainly guilty of Jeffrey Epstein using that friendship to pole vault himself higher within so-called polite society. And it is just something that cannot be argued. Now, you get into Prince Andrew, obviously, and that's a whole different ballgame because he is directly implicated in abusing trafficked girls who were being trafficked by Epstein. And obviously, we all know Virginia's accusations at this time. We know what Virginia has said, and we know how credible Virginia's statements have been. So Andrew is on a whole different level, in my opinion. And of course, when you have names like Trump or Clinton or Ehud Barak, that's going to draw some interest, you would think, right? There would be a lot more interest. They say there's worldwide interest here, but you would think there would be a lot more going on behind the scenes with the legacy media. But we haven't seen much of that. Just a scratch of the surface. No hard questions. And they just accept the narrative from these people who have been implicated in the abuse or the enabling of Jeffrey Epstein. Epstein died last August from what has officially been ruled as suicide by hanging, allegedly, in the Manhattan Federal Jail where he was being held on child sex trafficking charges related to abuse of dozens of girls from 2002 through 2005. And again, those charges as well, folks, I think would have just been placeholders. Those wouldn't have been the be-all, end-all charges that he would have been facing if this would have been seen through to completion and he didn't die in the custody of the government. There would have been a lot more charges coming, and we would have seen a really serious RICO case emerge then. No doubt about it. Zero doubt in my mind. On August 10th, Maxwell's lawyers wrote Nathan seeking the judge's assistance to improve Miss Maxwell's conditions of confinement at the Metropolitan Detention Center and her access to the discovery in this case so that she can meaningfully participate in her defense. Discovery is evidence that is turned over to parties in a legal case. Again, just more BS. What more does she need to participate? She really needs to participate in her defense? She's that smart, huh? If she was that smart, she would have never got caught up in this shit in the first place. Miss Maxwell has been treated less favorably than a typical pretrial detainee, and this has impacted her ability to assist in her defense, the lawyers wrote. It has become apparent that the BOP's treatment of Miss Maxwell is a reaction to the circumstances surrounding the pretrial detention and death of Mr. Epstein. Well, that sort of plays into it, but we don't want a repeat of what happened before, right? We don't need part 2 of somebody like this dying in custody. So the Bureau of Prisons has taken some extraordinary steps here, and they should. Maxwell needs to be safeguarded, she needs to see trial, and she needs to talk about what she knows in regards to other people who were involved. Defense lawyers told Nathan that Miss Maxwell has been held under uniquely onerous conditions, which include being confined outside the general population of the MDC. Who cares? I mean, really? That's for your client's own well-being. Why are you crying about that? Good Lord. She continues to be surveilled 24 hours a day by security cameras and by multiple prison guards, many of whom do not appear to be regular MDC personnel, the lawyers wrote. These prison guards constantly observe Miss Maxwell and take notes on her every activity, including her phone conversations with defense counsel. I'm sure they're not listening in on that. Come on. They're probably taking notes on her behavior, right? Look, when you have a sick monster like this and you have a chance to study it, you might as well. The letter said that until recently, Maxwell had been subjected to suicide watch protocols, which included being forced to wear special clothing and to being woken up every few hours each night. Her cell is searched multiple times a day, and she has been forced to undergo numerous body scans, the letter said. Well, she's lucky that the technology has come this far, because prior to that, she'd be getting full body cavity searches, and I wonder how much she would enjoy that. How would she like that? People doing whatever they want to her. So she's lucky that the technology has come this far, because there was some brutal stuff going on in those prisons before there was this technology, right? I mean, can you imagine those kind of those full body cavity searches? Makes me cringe even thinking about it. Last week, in another court filing, Maxwell's lawyers told Nathan the defense recently learned that some of these prison guards were, in fact, Bureau of Prison psychologists who were observing Miss Maxwell and evaluating her for hours each day without her knowledge. Again, so what? When you have Hannibal Lecter in your midst, you got to send in some doctors to try and get an idea of how the brainwaves work, right? We are aware of no other pretrial detainee receiving such treatment, the lawyers added. Well, none of your other pretrial detainees are Ghislaine Maxwell. None of them are implicated with running a trafficking scheme that served the most powerful people in the world, okay? There's your answer. Now shut up and go and prepare your defense. Nathan, in rejecting the request to order BOP to shift Maxwell into the jail's general population, wrote, "The BOP is providing the defendant with conditions that allow her access to discovery materials so that she can meaningfully participate in the preparation of her defense. Further action by the court at this juncture is therefore unnecessary," Nathan wrote. Nathan saying that prosecution is providing Maxwell with everything that she should have, with everything that's required for her to put up a proper defense is being given to her, according to Judge Nathan. So basically, once again, she's telling the defense that they are swinging at air. But the judge added that if facts on the ground change such that the defendant is not being provided sufficient access to her legal materials, defense counsel may seek intervention by the court. The judge also wrote in addressing the monitoring of Maxwell by the BOP that the agency has a duty to ensure the safety and security of the defendant. And I think that that's properly handled by Judge Nathan, right? It is very important and crucial that Maxwell is protected and safeguarded so that her accusers and those that she abused can face her in court like they should have been able to face Jeffrey Epstein. And the fact that Judge Nathan continues to slap Ghislaine Maxwell with big fat L's is quite enjoyable as well. If you'd like to contact me, you can do that at Bobbycapucci at protonmail.com. That's BOBBYCAPUCCI at protonmail.com. You can also find me on Twitter at BOBBY_CAPUCCI. To all of you who have donated to the GoFundMe recently, thank you very much. And all of the links that go along with this article can be found in the description box. All right, everybody, I'll be back tomorrow morning. I hope you all have a great night.